responsibilities to the land and water. Mr. Mayor, we do not have a supplementary agenda this evening. Rules for the council chambers. The municipality of Chatham-Kent supports open meetings that welcome debate of public policy issues in an atmosphere that is inclusive, integrity, civility, fairness, and respect for differing points of view. Anyone conducting themselves in a way that disturbs, disrupts, or impedes the orderly conduct of the meeting, interrupts or makes derogatory statements or hate speech, defamatory comments about councillors, staff, speakers, or fellow members of the public may result in removal from the premise. We ask that you do not approach members of council if they are seated in their council seats around the council horseshoe. The use of posters, signage, and literature is also prohibited. I'd like to pass the microphone over to Mr. Dubin.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So just an update for those of you watching or those of you in attendance today. Some of you may have noticed that we have security in the building now. And the reason for that is we have, unfortunately and regrettably, over the last little while, we have had incidents of suspicious behavior in the building, in and around council meetings. And as some of you may know, unfortunately, this is not just an issue in Chatham-Kent. There's been a number of municipalities that have had to deal with violent behavior in council chambers. So staff had been talking about this for a while now, and we had planned on coming forward with a report to council in about 5-6 weeks' time. But rather than wait until that report is ready, we just thought we'd take some temporary steps for now. I will tell you that a report coming forward will look at not only policy, but also some recommended changes to our physical space. I think our physical space presents some challenges, and but nothing that can't perhaps be addressed. And just to be clear, this is about the safety of not just council, but the safety of staff and the safety of visitors that come here to participate in the process. And I think we feel pretty strongly that we need to make sure that people feel secure while they're in the building. So as you noted today, for those of you that came through the front door, we do have security there issuing passes to individuals, so we know who's in the building, how many people are in the building. We also have special passes for the media as well. I think only a couple councillors came through the front door, so you may not have seen that. I think maybe 2 councillors came through the front door. Obviously, it'll take us a little while to get the whole process, nailed down, and make sure that everybody feels comfortable with what we have in place. So it's unfortunate, but it's one of those things that unfortunately we have to address. We have an obligation to keep people secure and safe, and we were hoping we wouldn't have to get to that, but given some of the situations we've had to deal with, we really don't have any choice. So happy to answer any questions that council have. Mr. Soldo and his team are working on the report. I should see it in about 6 weeks, and at that point we can have a debate at council in terms of whether or not you want to implement the proposed physical changes. And there'll also be some policy changes, which I won't get into now, but as you heard the clerk say, we already have some rules in terms of banners in the council chambers, and I think we're going to have to beef that up a little bit too, so it's really clear. It's not just banners; it could be something else that effectively has the same consequences. So that's it, Your Worship. Subject to any questions anyone has.
Any questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We do not have any pecuniary interest. We did receive one deputation. It was email only from Jacqueline Faubert on item 16A, the Chatham-Kent Waste Drop-Off Depot Access Program, and that will be attached to the minutes. Moving on to the consent agenda. We have 4 reports that have been pulled this evening. Item 14A, the tender award contract T23-219, Selkirk Street Sewer Separation and Memory Lane Reconstruction, pulled by Councillor Story. Item 16A, Chatham-Kent Waste Drop-Off Depot Access Program, has been pulled by Councillor Sakachi, Councillor Harrigan, and Councillor Jubinville. Item 17A, the motion of Councillor Harrigan regarding expanding housing options and opportunities in rural areas, have been pulled by Councillor Harrigan and Councillor Jubinville. And the last report is item 18B, the 2023 Statement of Remuneration and Expenses for Elected and Appointed Officials, pulled by Councillor Jubinville. Therefore, the items remaining in the consent agenda to be approved by one motion is item 13A, B, 14B, C, D, 15A, B, 18A, C, D, E, and 19A.
Councillor Wright and Councillor Harrigan, can I get you to move the consent agenda, please?
I'll move that, thank you.
And I will second.
Any questions? Seeing none, we'll put it to vote.
Councillor Doyle
Yes.
and Councillor Carmen McGregor.
yes,
All votes are in. Motion passes 16-0.
We'll go to item 14, tender awards.
14A, tender award contract T23-219, Selkirk Street Sewer Separation and Memory Lane Reconstruction.
Councillor Story and Councillor Finn, can I get you to put this on the floor, please?
Happy to move, Mr. Chair.
happy to second.
Councillor Story?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just had a couple of questions, I assume for Mr. Soldo and his team. This I actually didn't, I grew up not far from Selkirk, so I'm happy to see this work being done. I know this is an ongoing process to upgrade our infrastructure, and certainly a topic that we'll be discussing, that we discuss almost every meeting. So I'm glad to see this one coming to the forefront. Just a quick question, a few questions I had from a few of the local residents about the process for this. Just so folks in the public are aware about the oversight for construction infrastructure projects. For a project like this, why do we hire external consultants, and is this a standard practice?
Thank you, Your Worship. In terms of many of our projects, I would say about 75% of the projects that we do, we simply don't have the internal capacity to undertake those projects. So our staff will provide project management of those projects themselves, and we'll end up hiring external consultants to do the actual design of the project. They could be doing creating the tender as well. And then when it comes to construction, we normally utilize that engineering consultant also do the contract admin, because again, we just don't have the amount of inspectors to be out on every site and oversee the projects themselves.
It'd be safe to say, since we do have such a variety of projects due to the size of our geography, that we need to hire these different folks because they have different skill sets that are needed for us?
Through the mayor, I would say that we generally have the skill sets to do the projects ourselves internally, but we don't necessarily have the capacity to undertake all of those projects.
Right, that makes sense. Is there any cost threshold for when that would kick in? Or is it project to project with consultation with your team?
Thank you, through your worship. It is really project to project. There are some programs that we normally do internally. It's your routine shave and paves, it's those sort of contracts which don't really have a complexity or don't have the same amount of risk potentially in the project. And then the other ones we'll send out to consultants to undertake.
Thank you. And when you mention risk, could you explain a little more what you mean by that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's projects that potentially have, say I'll use an example for a bridge project. While we have staff that are very competent undertaking bridges, we really want to hire consultants who have done multiples of those kind of projects in the past so that they can undertake the full design and construction admin.
Thanks. Just two more questions. Do we have any concerns with our construction costs, with construction costs in general, more than doubling in some instances with inflation and what we've seen in some of our other projects? How do we address that in our project planning?
Well, through the budget, through you, Mr. Mayor, through the budget process, we normally do have an estimate of what we determine that project would be worth. And then once it's tendered, then we have that actual cost when it's come in. At that point, we do build some contingency normally into those projects, but we wouldn't, once it's tendered, we wouldn't see a doubling of costs because the contractor has identified what their cost is to build that project based on the specifications we have. And if they're going to go over budget, even beyond the contingency, there is an approval process as per our purchasing policy that we have to follow in, and they would have to get pre-approval to have any overruns as per the policy.
Thank you. I'm really encouraged to hear that. I appreciate your sharing that information with us, and I'm glad to see that we have this type of oversight on these scales of project, and I commend the team for ensuring that we're hiring these third-party consultants to ensure these costs are accounted for. Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, we'll put it to vote.
Councillor C. McGregor
Yes.
and Councillor Doyle.
Yes.
All votes are in. Motion passes 16-0.
We'll go to item 16, infrastructure and engineering services.
16A, Chatham-Kent Waste Drop-Off Depot Access Program.
This is an information report, so we have three people that just have some questions about that. I'll go to Councillor Sakachi, then Councillor Harrigan, then Councillor Jubinville.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess the question would be to Huda, first and foremost, I guess. Is there going to be other reports that are going to come back to council, not just with this report, but how we are changing the collection methods for bulk items with all the maybe issues that you foresee happening or the issues that, we're already starting to see in the community? Is there going to be some additional kind of things to address those that, that you foresee when we change these policies?
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chair. In terms of this project itself, yes, we do plan to have a kind of a status report of how the project has gone and how the inflation has been a year after its implementation.
And when we circle back to the curbside bulk item pickup, I just had a quick question for Mr. Taylor as well. Dave, I know that, sorry, Mr. Taylor, I know that we, in the future here, we're going to be receiving a report back to council regarding like habitual offenders and habitual residences that are, having a lot of infractions and putting a lot of challenges to our, to our staff as well as to our community. And I know since this is all new that this wouldn't be included. I don't know if you need a motion from the floor, but I'm just, maybe just to ask you, is it possible for us to include the bulk waste cleanup in that when you're bringing that information back to consider what we could do for habitual offenders when it comes to that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So David Taylor, Director of Legal Services. Thanks for the question, Councillor. I don't believe a motion is necessary. Certainly Council could pass one, but we are continuing to work on kind of some of those tools that be available for dealing with repeat offenders or habitual offenders. And certainly I think administration could just take the suggestion from yourself tonight and just kind of add this to the list of things that we're looking at. I don't believe a motion from Council is necessary, but happy to absolutely consider this as trying to figure out what tools we can have to deal with those kinds of offenders.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. I just foresee there being a lot of issues. And my closing question is just going to be when it relates to this. Huda, when we kind of come up with this new model and, the different aspects of bulk collection, is it strictly because of the, like a cost aspect that we're looking at costs? And can you just speak to the public? Because I read this report. It took me 3 times to read the report to kind of understand it. So I just feel that the general communities, when they're going to take part in these things, are going to have a lot of frustration and see a lot of significant changes. And I'm just curious if we can say from like a governance standpoint, this is strictly basically to try for improvements? Is it basically to look for cost, recovery? Like, what would you say the biggest thing that we can say to the public that we're kind of making these large changes? Because for some, it is going to be pretty significant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just for the benefit of the viewers, my name is Huda Oda, I'm Manager Waste Management. And I just want to separate perhaps this report, which is related to depot access and the bulk item. The bulk item collection levels of service has come to Council in August 2022 with the recommendation to move from an integrated weekly program to a quarterly program. At that point, it was approved. And if I want to talk about kind of the drivers behind the change. So first I want to mention that it was one of the recommendations that came out of the Waste Management Service, well, it was at that time Waste and Recycling Service Review Committee. And what kind of went into that decision is we looked at a number of things. We looked at our legal obligations. we did have a public survey that was open from January 1st to January 31st of 2022. So the respondents related to bulk item questions in that survey. We looked at best practices and what other municipalities in Ontario do. And we also looked at kind of how we can move the program from an integrated within the garbage limit and curbside to improve it so that we can better track it and better be able to resolve any issues that come with it. So that these are kind of the drivers that came up with our recommendation. And anything else in terms of its success or not, this is something that we just implemented in January, and we're tracking any of those issues that are coming in, and we can definitely come back with a report if that's what council wants on how that went.
Yeah, and my closing thing is, I've seen a significant challenge just since January. I didn't, realize that it was going to be as significant as it is, and I think that having these things in place without some diligence in enforcement, it's going to be a big challenge. And I would prefer to see a report back in, maybe a year or so to see the challenges that we've had, just because I already see how much that this is affecting Blenheim, and I do know that, we are limited on our enforcement from a staffing perspective, and we have a very large community to enforce. And I just really feel that this is going to, going quarterly is going to cause significant eyesores. And I just wanted to make sure that I was going to stress that, what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing to ensure that staff is aware of that in an open forum. So do appreciate your time and your diligence. Thank you.
Councillor Harrigan, followed by Councillor Juvenville.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, Huda, I do have some questions based on a bit of the deputation that we received, and then also for, I think, clarity for the general public. So the first question I have is, can you explain the eligibility of the depots and if anything has changed with the permit system? So if someone is a rural resident versus an urban residential customer, what is their eligibility to use the depot?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So with this program, we are not changing any of the eligibility of residents who use or cannot use this program. The 8 transfer stations or waste drop-off depots have always been open to residential sources of garbage and recycling, and then we also run a host of other recycling streams at these transfer stations. They were never targeting ICNI or commercial properties from the beginning. So that has not changed. The only thing that changed is really our mode of controlling who's using it. Before it was paper and pen. Well, after COVID, obviously that was not acceptable. And we're just trying to make it a more program improvement, more easier for anybody to be able to use it. So still for non-curbside residents who are using garbage, recycling, and bulk item disposal at these depots, any other recycling streams that is being used or offered by the depot, like used oil, tires, batteries, e-waste, this continues to be open to any resident in Chatham-Kent.
So the permit itself is not necessarily, so if you are a residential curbside customer, you can still go to the depot to drop off your oil or your tires or things that today those residential curbside customers can drop off.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Why is it that we cannot accept ICI waste at all of our rural depots?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this goes back to really the beginnings of these depots. These have been formed by the former townships before amalgamations, and so the service continues to a large extent grandfathered today. So the permits that are provided by the Ministry of Environment to these depots do not target ICNI, so not commercial, not as the primary users anyways. We do have 2 of our stations that accept commercial type of waste, but these are at a fee. It's more of a kind of a tipping service, but the kind of the heart of the service, which is for non-curbside, it is only residential, and we want to make sure that those who receive curbside are not abusing the service that's supposed to be for the non-curbside, kind of a bit more of a equality in that service.
Thank you. I have, I think, just 1 or 2 more questions. So there are some concerns about the impact of the permits and resulting increase in dumping. Certainly in the deputation that was noted to be a concern in rural areas, and this really impacts like the aesthetic and the lived environment as people are kind of going for walks and they see something like a mattress in the ditch on the side of the road. What can members of the agricultural community or residents of Chatham-Kent do if they see large items that are just dumped on the side of the road? And maybe this is potentially a question for Edward. for?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Typically, this is as any illegal dumping issue, it becomes part of the municipality's public works team jurisdiction if it is within their right of way. So residents can either call 311, email ck311@chatham-kent.ca, or they can go on their website and there's a portal where they can add their own customer service case so they can for triaging and for work on it.
Okay, great, thank you. And then last question is, so there's going to be a report coming back around the success of this model. How is it that we will track that and understand the success of the permit system in comparison to the pre-COVID sign-in sheet model?
Yes, I can definitely try and put some light here. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The fact is we never monitored a lot of how our uses are. We do have some financial information, we have some usage information, we have traffic count information, but it's been limited. So what we're doing here is we will not be able to measure 100% our success because we don't have a good baseline. But what we're going to keep an eye on is a few things. We're going to keep an eye on our costs. So the cost of the implementation of this and how the cost of operations are changing. We're going to keep an eye on the usage of our depots. We're also going to keep an eye on the traffic count. We're going to keep an eye on any issues that are coming through public works in terms of illegal dumping. Maybe there would be an increase, maybe not. I don't think so. I hope not to. And then from there, we can be also look at customer service. What are the customer service issues that are coming in through the residents, the users, our complaints or inquiries, and we take it from there. If there's going to be, as their process, if there's going to be any needed changes, we will do that for the 2026 implementation year.
Great, thank you. And I do just want to comment that I really did appreciate how the team was, at least in the Tilbury East where the pilot took place, there was some direct surveying of people as they were doing their garbage drop off on Saturday. I think it was either last Saturday or the Saturday before, and that went over really, really well. So I appreciate that direct engagement with the end users. So thank you so much, Mayor Canna, for the time. Those are all my questions.
Councillor Juneville.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff, and Councillor Harrigan asked most of my questions, but I do have one more, and it's more of a technical safety. In the Highway Traffic Act, it is an offense to drive a vehicle with any object placed in, hung on, or attached to a motor vehicle in a manner that will obstruct the driver's view of the highway or any intersecting highway. And I did a little bit of delving, and there was an accident that occurred because somebody's, I don't know if it was pertaining to garbage, but they had something hanging from their rear view mirror, and that was the cause of the accident. So I'm just wondering, how are we going to get around this with a lot of people in rural Chatham-Kent that will be driving around? They probably won't take them off of their rear view mirrors. So how are we getting around that with these hangers, or these, whatever they are, permits hanging from the rear view mirror?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's not something that we have necessarily researched and found a solution for, just because we did not identify this as a problem to begin with. Rear view mirror hangers are used for a variety of different purposes, for permits, for example, for those who need special parking and whatnot, so we did not think that was an issue to begin with. The rear view mirrors will be transferable, so someone can take them off if they want to. They're around 3 inches by 6 inches in terms of dimensions. So if it's something that council thinks that we should look into deeper, we can. But to begin with, we did not identify this as a problem.
Okay, thank you. I'm just wondering, if we do implement it, if we should put a little clause in there stating that we don't encourage people to drive around with them, just only when they're driving to the depot, just so it recluses us from any issues we may have that could come out of it potentially.
If I may just interject there, many people have utilized, many systems actually utilize the hangers off the rear view mirrors. So I appreciate the looking into Highway Traffic Act, but I don't believe that actually applies in this manner. Many municipalities, many corporations utilize that for parking permits and other things. So while you may necessarily meet, exactly the letter of law, I've never heard of a case where that's been identified as the root of an issue, or that it's posing a risk to the drivers themselves.
Maybe, is it worth it to ask our police friends if it's an issue at all? I don't know. I'm just going by what the Highway Traffic Act says, so.
Yeah, if I can, through you again, Mr. Worship, it's always the obligation of the driver to ensure they have a clear line of sight. So if they've placed something there, then they need to look around it. That would be my common sense approach, but also different cars have different obstructions. Some have rear view mirrors lower, some have higher, right? So we can definitely look into it, but that'd be the first I've heard that it's a concern in terms of the Highway Traffic Act.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Huda.
Councillor Bondi?
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. First of all, thanks very much for the Harwich, well, not that you installed it, but the Harwich transfer station is just the handiest thing in the world, like a guy with a large family from time to time, right? Very necessary. And the, like the organic disposal, what do we call that? Where you bring your leaves or whatever? Yeah, very great things to have. But my question is, obviously I've been to the Harwich transfer station a number of times, and I usually just pull in with a trailer full of junk or whatever. And the guy will say, it looks like $25, or maybe it's 30. So is there any kind of like, you know, rhyme or reason as to how much? It's a good deal. I'm not complaining. It's always a very good deal. They're very helpful guys, and typically they even help me. But how do they ballpark how much we pay?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So there is a formula. There's a $25 charge for every half cubic meter of material brought in to Harwich and or Wallsburg. At Wallsburg, we do have a weigh scale, so that's pretty much in numbers and cents, right? Whereas in Harwich, we do not have a weigh scale. And it is more of an eyeballing of what that material becomes. Our operators always err on the lower side for the customer so that they're not overcharging. But currently, we do not have a weigh scale that can 100% determine the
Oh,
actual
so they look at the size of your trailer and figure that's about right.
Yes, exactly. But so the formula is $25 per every half cubic meter. So if you're bringing, depending on what kind of trailer you're bringing, that may be more than half a cubic meter, and then so on and so forth.
Yeah, and like a weigh scale would be awfully expensive, especially $25 a crack and take an awful lot of trailers full of junk. Yeah, so it's a great thing. Thanks very much.
Seeing no other questions, we'll move on to item 17, Development Services.
17A, motion by Councillor Harrigan regarding expanding housing options and opportunities in rural areas.
Councillor Harrigan?
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I, Councillor Harrigan, move the following. Whereas Chatham-Kent has a large rural population with a growing need for new housing within rural areas to allow options for residents to age in place or raise a family close to the family farm, which also supports the overall agricultural sector. And whereas in April 2023, Council most recently approved updates to Chatham-Kent's housing policies and regulations to expand options for additional residential uses in both rural and urban areas. Therefore, be it resolved that administration prepare a further draft official plan and zoning bylaw amendment with a public consultation strategy for council consideration to A, implement policies to permit additional detached dwellings in rural areas, including on-farm and non-farm properties, and B, implement policies to allow the further division of non-farm properties in rural areas for new residential uses. To be brought back to council in June of 2024.
Councillor Juvenile, will you second that?
Yes, I will second that motion.
Okay. Councillor Harrigan, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. In many ways, I think this motion is a bit of a trailer motion to a main event conversation that would take place in June. We know in Chatham-Kent we are facing a housing crisis, and we also know that we are a very rural community. So to date, our council has done a lot of work looking at urban areas and opportunities for housing development in urban areas. This motion really directs staff to showcase to us what sort of opportunities there could be that some of our neighboring counties are actually implementing in rural areas within agriculture. I will say that this motion has come up for me because I've had a number of families reach out to me and ask about secondary dwellings specifically in rural communities, largely because they're looking at farm succession planning or keeping their family members kind of close to home, and kids and grandkids wanting to build a house kind of in the country with a bit more space that we are very much used to in Chatham-Kent. But also I've heard from residents that we need to have a careful balance, and we don't want to have people who are currently in rural areas kind of look out their window in 10 years from now and see subdivisions that we have a hard time providing infrastructure to or servicing. So certainly there's a balance. This starts the conversation. And I just, through you, have some questions to Bruce and team about the motion that I have, just so it's absolutely clear. Bruce, I'm just wondering if you can share with us typically what the engagement process would look like for this type of change in motion and what the public could expect in terms of next steps.
Thank you, Your Worship. So what we propose here is to bring forward some draft policy documents to council for the June date that you noted in your motion, and seek direction from council then to go out for further consultation with various stakeholders, both residents, the various ministries that we need to contact on this, the conservation authorities, just to name a few different stakeholders that need to be consulted on this. Because it is a change in policy that has been in place, the current policies for day one of Chatham-Kent, and essentially going back to the old official plans, just based on my recollection. So, and as you noted last year, based on Bill 23 at the time, we did bring forward amendments because we were required to be in line with the accessory dwelling unit provisions of the new legislation, which allows for one in a home and one in an accessory building, as long as there's full municipal services. Obviously, most agricultural areas don't, so it does require further policy review on what impacts that might potentially have. However, we did allow for one within an existing farm dwelling, just not one in an accessory building at this point. So that's kind of the general process. So we come get direction and then undertake a consultation program with various stakeholders that can be impacted.
Great, thank you. And I just wanted to note in the staff response to the motion, they did note that in June, there would be a thorough explanation of the changes within the planning bylaw. I know sometimes planning bylaws and zoning can get a bit complicated, so really appreciate staff's willingness to walk us through that step by step. So thank you, Mayor Caniff, that's all for me.
Councillor Jubenville, followed by Councillor Pincinel.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to offer my support for this motion. I can think of 3 families, agricultural families right now, that would surely benefit if this did come to fruition. I think it's something that's needed in this community, and it will obviously free up housing in the urban areas if these family members or whomever could build a secondary home on the farms or the rural properties. So I just wanted to say it's a thumbs up from me. Thank you.
Councillor Pincinel.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, I think this is an awesome idea. I have one question through to administration. I know over the years I've helped a lot of farmers with their severances to take a surplus dwelling off their farm. Will this allow, because at that point in time you couldn't build on the farm that was severed, will this allow you to build houses on that surplus farm?
Thank you, Your Worship. These are the policy options that we'll have to come back and consider. I think one of the things we need to look at are the surplus farm dwelling policy options. Because one of the reasons why this hasn't been allowed traditionally is the concern about additional severances once you start building more homes, right? Because there is an impact in agricultural areas. So I think we do need to look at our surplus policies in line with supporting this as well. So that will be part of the policy review that we need to look at.
Okay, well, that's good, because I think that we do need to, and that promotes building new houses out there on the farms. So anyway, thank you.
Seeing no other questions, we'll put it to vote.
Councillor Doyle
Yes.
and Councillor C. McGregor.
Yes.
All votes are in. Motion passes 16-0.
We'll move on to item 18, Finance, Budget, Information, Technology, and Transformation.
18B, 2023 Statement of Remuneration and Expenses for Elected and Appointed Officials.
Yes, information report. So Councillor Jubenville, you had a question.
Thank you, Mayor. I just had a point of clarification when the report was sent, or the entire agenda was sent out on Thursday. There's keeners that saw the original one, and I just wanted to clarify that my remuneration was corrected. So it is stated as correct now. It wasn't originally, but it is now. And I do have one question. There was and probably just because I don't know, but there was an expense from one of our previous counselors. So I'm just not quite sure how, I'm not targeting him, I'm just questioning how, when he's no longer on council, how he can submit expenses, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. So in that case, I think it's an example where he may have submitted the expense after his term on the committee expired and it was refunded in 2023. And we apologize for the error on the website.
That's okay. I just wanted to make sure everybody knew I didn't get paid what it said I got paid. So that's all. Thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to non-agenda business. Councillor Thompson, followed by Councillor Sakachi.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and since we're moving so quickly tonight, I hope you'll forgive me a little bit of a story. 6 years ago, I went down to Kentucky to check out the eclipse there, and it was an awe-inspiring thing. To see a total eclipse is something that not a lot of people get to see, and we are going to have the opportunity to see one here in Chatham-Kent coming up on April 8th. We'll get about 2.5 minutes of totality out at the lake, and if it's clear, absolutely every single community is going to be busy along Lake Erie. I know when I was down in Kentucky, you could picture an 8-hour traffic jam. It was like nothing I'd ever experienced, and I know, speaking to residents and business owners along the lake shore in Erie, they are having people coming up from Georgia. They're expecting family members from families that live there from all over Canada and the U.S. So I'd like to invite everybody out, especially if it is clear, to the beautiful shores of Lake Erie to check out the eclipse on April 8th. But I was also curious, and I was hoping that we could get some information from staff exactly how we plan on handling the potential deluge of people that will be coming to Chatham-Kent.
Chief Case, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you for the question. We actually had an eclipse planning meeting today for the emergency services. So Chatham-Kent Police have a traffic plan in place. Officer will be available. We will be staffing every fire station in Chatham-Kent. We will be putting a boat on the water because we're quite concerned a lot of people will take to the water. So there'll be a boat on the lake and there'll also be a boat in the bay. And between fire and EMS, we'll have a forward command point, a sort of medical centre at Erie Old Fire Hall. Aside from that, we are not seeing any huge events that's being planned. Most of the provincial planning is looking towards the Niagara region. They're expecting well in excess of 1 million people there. But I agree with you, after going through the eclipse in 1999 back home, it is quite the spectacle, and we do expect quite a lot of people to show up.
Thank you very much. A follow-up question, I think maybe to Bruce. Are we going to have the washrooms open in our lakeside communities, especially in our parks, to, or maybe somebody else could answer that, I'm not sure, to deal with the inevitability of people?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Caniff. It is something that I'll take back and have discussions with our park staff to ensure there is that availability given the influx of people that may occur.
If I appreciate that. If it is clear, it is not a may. It is going to be, especially right along the lake, it is going to be something that you will tell your family about. This is, an eclipse only happens about once every 360 years in any given trajectory. So none of us will live to see the next one here. And people do come from around the globe to check these out. When I was down in Kentucky, I was practically a local dealing with the people that had come from across the globe. So like I said, I'm not sure that we will see that. Like you said, I think a lot of it is in Niagara. But the eclipse will start at about 2 o'clock. Totality is at about 3:15. And again, if it's clear, you should take the day off work. You should go down and check it out to see the birds roost, to see the shadows change, and then to see the sunspots around the corona as the moon passes in front is absolutely life-changing. And so much so I plan on heading out west in 2044 to see the two out there as well in 44 and 45. So that's it. Again, I'd like to invite everybody out. I'm tickled pink. I really am. It's April 8th, And 2 o'clock, I hope to see you down at the water treatment plant, because that's where I'm going to be. Thank you.
Michael?
Yeah, thank you. I couldn't tell that you were tickled pink, Councillor Thompson, but I will give credit to Chief Case. He brought this to our attention about a year ago, to some ridicule. But I think we've all learned that it is going to be, potentially a challenge for us to manage. I don't want everybody to take the day off work. Unfortunately, we have, despite the invitation from Councillor Thompson. So I just wanted to know, I wanted you as councillors to know, there's been a committee working at this very closely. Some of our concerns sort of tie into what others are doing. For instance, what are the schools doing? And there has been some discussion about certain programs and whether we will run certain programs. So we have been talking about this for some time, and I'm confident that we have it under control to the extent that we can. But we understand that it's going to be a big deal for the region, and we're working with our partners to make sure that people are safe. I'll be honest, I only remember the last one. Because I recall that a certain president was looking directly at it, even though they weren't supposed to. So that's my recollection from the last one. Hopefully that won't be, first and foremost in the news this time.
Councillor Thompson, if you could also add in there from a safety perspective, the glasses, if you could tell us where to acquire those glasses.
I hesitated because last I heard we may not have had as many as we once did. Do we still have glasses in stock at the library? Last I'd heard, maybe it was a rumor in the community that they were all.
I just want to encourage safety and everybody deciding to do this.
Don't put on your safety squints. Make sure you put on the safety glasses. Absolutely. And there were some available at the library. I hope they still are there. You can also get them online as well. And I think some local stores had them too. Make sure you have them. You need them. You can still see. That's the other thing too. When you have them on, it doesn't obscure everything. Make sure you have them, especially for you and your kids. So, yeah, safety first.
Councillor Thompson, I'd like to thank you for enlightening us.
I hope to see you out there on the coast.
Councillor Sakachi, followed by Councillor B. McGregor.
No questions or comments, Mayor Caniff.
Councillor B. McGregor, followed by Councillor Story.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I wanted to extend greetings of Ramadan Mubarak to people in our community that are honoring this holy month from March 10th to April 9th. And I wanted to extend a thank you to the Chatham Islamic Center for partnering with the municipality. They produced a video that shares some tips for organizations to be inclusive during Ramadan. So if you want to find that video, it is on the Municipality of Chatham-Kent's Facebook page. Thank you.
Councillor Story.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I also wanted to mention a happy Holi to everyone in our Hindu community celebrating. It's a significant Hindu festival celebrated as a festival of colors, love, and spring. So you gotta love that. We have a growing Nepali community here in Chatham-Kent that I think will be observing this. I just want to recognize them tonight and wish them a happy and safe Holi celebration. Thank you very much.
Councillor Jubenville.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to pass on the same sentiments to both of these groups. We're very rich in our community of Chatham-Kent, so I would like to acknowledge all of our Christian community who are entering into Holy Week this week, Good Friday on Friday, and then Easter Sunday. So a happy Easter to all of our Christian friends.
Just to add a couple quick things here. April 1st, 2024 will be the official centennial of the Royal Canadian Air Force. So the atrium color will be changed to blue. And also on Sunday, March 26th, encourage everyone to wear purple to raise awareness for epilepsy in our local community. Oh, and Councillor Crew.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I just want to acknowledge the gift that we received today from Pet and Wildlife Images. If you opened the package, we received a thank you note from Pet and Wildlife, and just a little bit of information in there. Did you know that our local shelter helps over 3,000 pets a year? So just to let you know that it's nice that we got that with that bit of information. And if you're feeling a little blue, open it up and have a look at Misty and Johnny Trouble, Johnny Rotten, the name of the cat. So you know, I hope he's already adopted, because with that name, he's probably not getting one. But thank you to the Pet and Wildlife for all the work that you do.
Councillor Story, you had a second one?
I apologize, Mr. Chair. I forgot to mention since we don't have a council meeting before then, I just wanted to remind everyone that next Friday, April 5th is the deadline to submit nominations for CK Senior of the Year. If you know someone 60 plus, yes, that's considered a senior in our nominations. Doing something wonderful, volunteering in our community, please submit a nomination. They will all be recognized and will be announced in June, which will draw your attention to that later on in the year. But please submit your nominations for wonderful seniors doing wonderful things in our community. You can email the mayor's office at ckmayor@chatham-kent.ca. You can get an application form, hard copy, at any of our senior centers, any of our municipal service centers, any of our libraries, and the nomination form's also online at Let's Talk CK. So thank you very much. I'm looking forward to receiving all those nominations. Thank you.
We'll go on the first and second reading. Councillor Pincinel and Councillor Thompson, can I get you to move that, please?
So moved, your worship.
And seconded.
Anyone opposed? Motion carried. Third and final reading. Councillor Hall and Councillor C. McGregor.
So moved.
Anyone opposed? Motion carried. We'll go to a resolution of council. Councillor Crew, and we'll have Councillor Doyle wrap it up for us tonight.
Thank you. I move that Chatham-Kent Council adjourn to its next meeting to be held on Monday, April 8, 2024, and that Chatham-Kent Council authorize itself to meet in closed session on that day to discuss any matters permitted by the Municipal Act. I so move.
Anyone opposed to wrapping up at 6:48? Seeing none, it's a wrap. Thanks, everyone.